Okay, so we are live. Should keep this. Okay, so good evening, everyone. So we are back with the orthodontic session for the MDS 360 degree, the 1 hour power sessions which are occurring daily on YouTube for your NEET MDS and IIIMS exam. Okay, myself, Dr. Ujjwal Agrawal. I am the orthodontic faculty at AIIMS. So today I am here with a relatively, you can say, ignored topic in orthodontics, that is theories of growth, or more likely or more rightly to be said, theories of craniofacial growth, because our aim is to deal with this head, neck and face region. Okay, and its growth, how it occurs, what are the various theories which were postulated, and which is the current accepted dogma or theory which is being followed. Earlier you used to get questions on which author or who gave that theory and all that. Right now the scenario has changed, and you more likely get questions related to the application of this theory. So understanding these theories becomes very important. Okay, rather than just mugging up the topic. So once again, if anyone has any doubt, can very well write in the comment section and I'll be happy to answer them. So beginning with the theories. So first is a summary of all the theories of the craniofacial growth, beginning with the remodeling theory given by Brash, genetic theory, the sutural duodominance theory, the cartilaginous theory, the functional matrix hypothesis, the very important one, Van Limburg hypothesis, the servo system theory, neurotropism, the functional matrix hypothesis revisited, and lastly the growth relativity hypothesis given by John C. Woodhouse. Okay, इनके आगे जहाँ मैंने the red mark which I put, these are the really important for your exam. So exam से पहले जो होता है ना, एक quick revision a day before which is done. अगर if you get the time to revisit this topic, these three theories should be revised and revisited. Okay, just a minute, this is not working properly. Okay, so a lot to cover in a very small amount of time. So beginning, I'll be rushing through the initial theories, and my more focus will be on these three, that is the functional matrix, the servo system, and the growth relativity hypothesis. Okay, so beginning with the remodeling theory given by James Cooper Brash. Okay, good to hear. No, I was more worried about my end. There is some problem. I was not able to see the comments here. That's what I was more worried about. Okay, so beginning with the initial theory, that is the remodel. So before starting them, what I want to say is the basic crux of all these theories and this order. If you want to serve it comes both Stutzman and Petrov in one MCQ, different answer given. Stutzman and Petrovic, Charlier and Petrovic. Petrovic is common, both are correct. If you want to go, we can go with the first one, common, Stutzman and Petrovic. Okay, technically both are correct, but more appropriate the first one. Okay, beginning with, as I was saying, whenever you study theories of growth, do study them in this order only, because there are reason, apart from the year in which they are given, there is a reason that first initial theories had more importance were given on genetics, and later on environmental causes were also included. So initial theory, more genetics importance would be given. As the time progressed, equal importance to both will be given, and in recent terms, as to when we move towards somewhat here, 100% towards environmental causes importance will be given. So what are the environmental causes? Environmental means the external, or you can say the epigenetic, the surrounding environment, how it influences the growth. Okay, so that is the basic crux. Just remember this basic crux before studying about growth theories. Okay, so beginning with the, as I was saying, beginning with the first theory, that is the remodeling theory given by James Cooper Brash. He said that, simple theory, he said that the bones of the skull grows by selective resorption and deposition of bone. So supposedly this is the mandible, there is resorption on the anterior surface and there is will be deposition on the simple thing. Okay, and this term specifically for maxilla and mandible, he gave the term known as Hunterian growth, which was popularized by Sicker in the year 1941. Okay, so growth of the jaw bones takes place by selective addition and deposition of bone. So one surface पे resorption हो रहा होगा, तो दूसरी surface पे, opposite surface पे there will be addition of bone, so as to maintain the length and breadth and thickness of the bone. Okay, and what is important in this remodeling theory is this Hunterian growth term. So this Hunterian growth term was specifically given for the growth of the mandible by this selective addition and resorption. Now later on, this theory was disapproved by Jorg. If you remember Jorg, he is the one in measurement approach of growth. When we studied, he gave his measurement approach of growth using implants. So he later on found that growth of the maxilla and mandible occurs by rotational growth. What is rotational growth? We will study in subsequent sessions or in the class. I cannot discuss rotational growth rotations right now. Just remember that growth of the maxilla and mandible occurs by rotational growth. Okay, next comes the genetic theory given by Brody. This was the earliest theory. It has the role of complete dependence on the role of genetic reprogramming, that genes are the sole determinant for growth and sole and exclusive determinant of growth, and the growth of and control and regulation of the skull growth is largely, or you can say 100%, done by intrinsic genetic factors. Okay, so genes are the exclusive determinants for all growth parameters and they form the basics for any given cell organelle. This is the basic biology which you would have studied in at your graduation level. What are genes? So this is the second theory, easy to understand. So there are certain points which were in favor. The first was the Habsburg jaw. So what is Habsburg jaw? So it was a class 3 tendency present in the German royal family. So students, what was Habsburg jaw? A very important term for your MCQ. So it was found that in a German royal family, they were known as, they had surname, or you can say they were known as the Habsburgs. They had a tradition of having a consanguineous marriage, that is marrying within their own relatives. So what happened was that offsprings or the children born out of such marriage had a similar kind of jaw. that is the prognathic mandible, which was present from first to the last generation until they survived. The last generation was so severe, if you could have looked at those images, you can Google them, that they were unable to eat or open their mouth because the gene was so much expressed that the lower jaw was prognathic. But at that time there was not much research was done, and that's why this royal family became extinct. Okay, there are still images of these depicted in their museums and all. So what is important is the Habsburg's jaw. So this point was in favor of this genetic theory that growth is largely regulated by genes and there is no external or outside influence. Next, the primitive human population. So primitive human population, the one which used to live on trees and all that. So at that time there was not much travel, not much intermingling. There were tribals which used to live together. There was less intermingling, so there was less malocclusion. A group of people used to live a nomadic life, so it was found that there was less malocclusion in that population. Hence again this point was in favor of this genetic regulation of craniofacial growth. But similarly, there were some points which were not in favor. The first one was the experiment done in Hawaii by Chung et al. A very landmark study. Okay, so what this study was about, that what is Hawaii? Hawaii is a group of islands located in the United States. So according to this theory, when a group of people living on an island, they are typically isolated, so there should be less prevalence of malocclusion according to this genetic theory, because they were relatively isolated from the outside population. But on examination, on further studies, it was found that none as such result was found. The prevalence of malocclusion was at par at those with the ones who are living on the coastal areas or on the land rather than on the island. Okay, so hence this theory, this point went against this genetic theory. Next, the class 3 mandible. Okay, so it was later on found that not only genetic, there are certain environmental causes too, which was responsible for the development of class 3 mandible. What are those environmental causes? You all know, at the time of delivery as well, if there is certain, and there are syndromic associations as well. So not only genetic, there are certain environmental causes as well which are associated with the development of class 3 jaw relation. Okay, lastly, the rocker's jaw. So what is rocker's jaw? First of all, rocker's jaw is a term given to jaws with no antigonial notch, no or absence of antigonial notch. What is antigonial notch? On a panorex or an OPG, if you would have seen a notch present, if this is the mandible, the notch or the bend or the concavity present at the lower border of the mandible is known as antigonial. If this notch is absent, if the lower border is flat, it is known as rocker's jaw. So it was found that it is a characteristic of Polynesians. Okay, so if there is no antigonial notch, it was straight away said that it is the ancestry of that person is of Polynesian ancestry. But as you know, you would have also seen patients, observed panorex with the people having no antigonial notch. So having rocker's jaw is not a characteristic feature of Polynesian population nowadays. Okay, so again this point went against the genetic theory of growth, that genes are the only one responsible for the growth, craniofacial growth. Okay, so just remember these terms: Habsburg jaw, rocker's jaw, and this Hawaiian experiment. So anyone has any doubt until now? Otherwise I'll move ahead. Very easy to understand till now, so I won't wait and move ahead. Next comes the sutural dominance theory. तो उसके नाम में है that it is dominantly according to the role of, highlight the role of sutures. Okay, so what are sutures? Sutures are present at the junction of the bones when they meet with respect to each other. This is a very layman definition of suture. Okay, so according to this theory, growth of the craniofacial region is by these sutures. Sutures are not only present in the cranial wall, they are present in the midface region as well, between the junction of like zygomatic-maxillary suture, frontomaxillary, frontozygomatic, and so on, which you all know from your anatomy classes. Okay, so it was given by Weinmann and Sicher. They were both anatomists first of all, and they used dyes in their study. Okay, so what does it say? It says that sutures, cartilages, and periosteum are responsible for growth which is under intrinsic genetic control. So still now we have moved from genetic theory to sutural dominance theory. This theory also says that sutures are responsible, but the growth at the sutures is under genes only, that is genetic control. Okay, so till now, earlier it was 100% dependent on genes. Now in sutural dominance theory, they say that growth is occurring through sutures, correct, but the growth of the sutures is through intrinsic genetic or the intrinsic genes present which is responsible for their growth. Okay, so what is the basic essence of this theory? This says that the craniofacial skeletal system, it enlarges or separates or grows due to the expansile forces exerted by the sutures as they separate. So what happens is, sutures पर जो ग्रोथ हो रही है वो जीन्स की वजह से हो रही है. Sutures tend to grow. Okay, when they tend to grow, because of this they tend to separate, and when they separate, the growth of the surrounding bones also. So the role of the intrinsic genetic factors is major and local environmental factors is minor till now. Okay, so technically there are two regions, major regions in the craniofacial region. That is, the first is the base of the skull, and rest the flat bones of the cranial bone. Just remember chondrocranial and desmocranial region. So chondrocranial is the base of the skull. Remember endochondral growth, intramembranous growth, and desmocranial, that is the cranial wall. Both are mostly through the intrinsic genetic control, and local environmental factor have minor role in their growth. Okay, so this is the basic essence of this theory. How does it occur? So it says that sutures, cartilages, and the periosteum are the growth centers. Growth site versus growth center growth, if you all know, remember. Okay, and why is it called a sutural dominance theory? Because the primary event which is occurring is the growth at the sutural region and the proliferation of the connective tissue between them. And when the connective tissue proliferates, there is expansile forces which separates them, results in the increase in the growth of the surrounding structure. So increase in size of the cranial vault takes place via the primary growth of the bones at the sutures, which forces the bones of cranial vault away from the each other. Cranial vault हो गया. Next आता है the mid face or the bones of the facial region. So how does it occur? Growth at this region through sutural dominance theory. It is through the sutural expansion of the circummaxillary sutural system as well. Cranial vault में region में you all know intraoccipital, intersphenoid or suture present. In the mid-face region, there is a circummaxillary suture system which is present, which forces the mid-face in the downward and forward direction. So cranial vault का growth हो गया, cranial base का growth हो गया, mid-face का हो गया, बचा क्या? Mandible. So mandible में कोई suture है नहीं. So how does the mandible grow? It is through the growth of the condylar cartilage. Okay, so as I said, the stimulus for the growth is produced by the tension produced by the displacement of the bones. How the bones get displaced? Because of the proliferation of connective tissue at the sutural level. Simple. So जहाँ जहाँ suture है पूरे head and neck face में, वहाँ growth through sutures हो रही है. Sutures का growth हो रहा है genes के थ्रू. Simple and summary of this theory. So as I said, there are certain evidence against this theory. What was this evidence? So it was found that when these, so if the growth is occurring through the suture, and the sutures are acts like a growth center, so when you take these growth center or sutures from one place to another, so technically since they are under their own genetic regulation and not held by the surrounding, they should continue to grow. But it was found that when there was subcutaneously autotransplantation of the zygomatico-maxillary suture was done, it was not found to grow. Next, extirpation of facial sutures has no appreciable effect on the dimensional growth of skeleton. Okay, so what was done was facial sutures को cut करके हटा दिया, and it was found that there was no dimensional effect on the growth of the skeleton was there. So the drawbacks were that it could not explain the role of local environment in causing periosteal remodeling, and due importance was given to growth of bones at the cartilaginous unit. So in conclusion of this theory, it was said that sutures are adaptive growth site, they are not growth centers, hence they have no tissue separating force and are comparable to growth centers. They are just adaptive growth site. First of all, they are sites, not growth centers, and they are adaptive, means they adapt to the growth of the surrounding structure, not vice versa, which was said according to this theory. Okay, so I hope I am clear until now the role of sutural dominance or the role of suture in the growth of the craniofacial region. Hence this theory was also rejected. Next comes the cartilage directed growth theory. So from sutures we are moving towards the role of cartilages. If anyone has any doubt until now can write, otherwise we'll move ahead. So now cartilage directed, again in the name only it is very clear that cartilages are the primary factor in the growth of the craniofacial region. And which cartilage? That is the nasal septal cartilage for the midface and condylar cartilage for the mandible. And on what animal the experiments were done? So on rabbits. So till now in sutural dominance theory, 80 to 90% genetic role, less than 10% on environmental factor. Now we are moving towards a time where due importance to local environmental factors were also given. So it is said that base of the skull, that is the chondrocranial region, was under genetic control, and rest of the region, that is base of the skull के ऊपर क्या आता है? Cranial vault, and नीचे क्या आता है? Mid face region, was under environmental region. Again this theory was given by James H. Scott, who was an Irish anatomist, also known as Scott's hypothesis, nasal septum theory, cartilaginous theory, or nasocapsular theory. So what does it say? It said that sutures have no direct role in the growth of craniofacial skeleton. They are just passive, secondary and compensatory site of the face formation and growth. Okay, and cartilaginous development is under tight genetic control, and they continue to dominate the postnatal facial growth. So once the child is born, the growth is mainly through the cartilages, and which is under tight genetic regulation. And the nasal septum cartilage, which is the most important one according to this theory, is responsible for both pre and postnatal growth. So antero-inferior growth of the nasal septum, which is buttressed against the cranial base, pushes the midface in downward and forward direction. So coming to this image, what happens is, this is the nasal, NS stands for nasal septal cartilage. So nasal septal cart, जैसे sutural dominance में क्या हो रहा था, sutures की growth होती थी, pushes the surrounding structure, and passive growth of used to occur in the surroundings. Here similar thing, the nasal septal cartilage is growing, which pushes the in the downward direction and leads to the downward and forward movement of the mid face region. So अगर याद करने के हिसाब से you want to understand similar kind of thing. So from suture we have moved towards the nasal cartilage region. Similar kind of thing is occurring, that expansile growth is occurring through the genetic control and leading to the downward and forward pushing of the midface region. Okay, so how this theory was proved? It was done, experiments were done on the rabbit snout. What was done? That the rabbit snout was extirpated or cut, and it was after resection it was observed that there was lack of growth of the midface region after removal of the nasal septal cartilage. Okay, so how does this nasal septal cartilage became so important that it is responsible for the growth of the whole midface? Okay, so it was said that this nasal septal cartilage is typically an extension of the cranial base cartilage, and so as it grows further, it separates the facial bones from one another and also from the cranial portion of the skull. That's what I just said, that as it grows, it pushes the midface in the downward and forward direction and allows it to grow. Okay, and at the same time, how is the growth taking place in the cranial vault region? So in the cranial vault, the growth takes place at the region of suture by surface deposition. Okay, sorry for the interruption. So at the same time, how is the growth in the cranial vault occurring? Through the sutures, and not by sutural expansion, but by just by surface deposition of bones at the sutural level. So as this theory as we moved ahead, there were certain evidences which emerged against this theory. What was this evidences? So similar kind of extirpation was done on the pig snout, and it was observed that there was only slight deformity and not a major deformity or major growth retardation of the midface occurred in the pigs. Okay, so in then it was concluded that true, nasal septal is important for the anteroposterior growth of the midface because of the endochondral bone formation occurring at the posterior bottom, but it is not the only factor which is responsible. What are the other factors? We'll study during next topic of postnatal growth. So nasal septal cartilage is responsible for the anterior posterior growth, but not the only factor, because there are certain vertical growth which is occurring, which is there is transverse growth of the maxilla which also occurs. So it is due to other factors as well. I hope this theory is also clear. So we'll move ahead to the next and the very important theory, the functional matrix hypothesis. Technically in my class I take approximately an hour or two to continue or complete functional matrix hypothesis, because it is a very important theory. The rest three in turn are very important, but nevertheless 30 minutes time remain and we'll try to cover as much as possible. Okay, so it is known as functional matrix hypothesis and the role of epigenetics given by Melvin Moss. So first important point or MCQ point from this is, it was based on the concept given by van der Klaauw, that is form follows function. What is form, what is function, I'll tell you in our coming slide. Next, important point is that the growth of the skeletal elements is determined by the growth of the adjacent soft tissues. So from suture to cartilage, now we have moved towards the growth is regulated by the now soft tissue. No longer dependent on the genes now, we are completely moved away from them. So what are the controlling factor? It is just the local epigenetic and the local environmental factors which are regulating the growth of the skull. So from 100% genetics we have moved towards 100% role of local environmental factors. Okay, that's why there was a shift in the thought process, complete 100% shift. So they called it as a functional paradigm. Paradigm means a new way of thinking or new way of looking. Complete reversal of the earlier concepts which was prevalent at that period of time. So what is the basic essence of this theory? That it says that just apart from the initiating the process, that is starting the process, genes play no further active role in skeletal growth of the skeletal structure. So how do they grow? It grows in direct response to the extrinsic epigenetic environment. Extrinsic means outside the genes, epigenetic means surrounding the gene environment. And what does it mean? That is, cell growth or skeletal growth is no longer dependent on the role of genes only. It is shaped or harnessed or modified by the surrounding environment. So it claims that there are certain non-skeletal factors which are present and surrounding and which are outside with those genes which are primarily responsible for the adaptive secondary response of skeletal tissues and organs. So अगर layman language में समझना है, so like we did in sutural dominance theory, sutures used to separate, express force on the skin bones and lead to the growth. Similarly here, what is happening here? Soft tissue is growing, leading to the growth of the tissue. So just what I said, that translation of various bones is due to the volumetric expansion of the encapsulated spaces or tissues. So once they are expanding, they are getting separated. Okay, and that's how they are growing. So in the first slide, as mentioned about a term functional cranial component. So what is functional cranial component, which is the basic premise of this theory? So according to this hypothesis, Moss or van der Klaauw said that head. So what is head? Head is of a body is the region where number of operations are carried out. So it is composed or made up of encapsulated areas within which specific functions are carried out, like respiration, digestion, vision, smell, etc. So this is the region. There are various encapsulated areas located in this. Imagine brain only, which are certain, each part of the brain serves one particular function. So for each function to be carried out, we require a hard and a soft tissue for it to occur. Okay, supposedly for vision, what do we require? So for vision we require eyes. Eyes is a soft tissue and it is enclosed, or where are eyes present? It is present inside the orbits or the socket present in the skull. That is the hard tissue part. For smell, what do we require? We require glands and nerves, and where they are present? They are present inside the nasal bone. Okay, so for digestion, food, what do we require? We require various number of organs like stomach, intestine. Where they are present? They are enclosed within rib cage and so on. Okay, so basic integration is occurring in the head. Okay, for the hard and these soft tissue for carrying out this specific function. Okay, and this totality of all the hard and soft tissue for each specific function is known as functional cranial component. Okay, so for digestion उसका hard tissue soft tissue part, for vision उसका hard tissue soft tissue part, for smell उसका hard tissue और soft tissue part, and everything, and in सबका integration, in the neural integration, all these in total, sum total is called as functional cranial component. So this is the functional cranial component. So as I said, for each specific functional cranial component, you require two things: one hard part and hard tissue part, one soft tissue part. So what is a hard tissue part? This is the skeletal unit. Soft tissue part is known as the empty spaces present between them, that is the functional matrices. So it consists of soft tissue and the empty spaces surrounding or between them. And skeletal unit, what does it do? It provides support or framework for this hard tissue, soft tissue part. Sorry. Skeletal unit is further divided into small, that is microskeletal, or big, which combined together are known as macroskeletal unit. And similarly, functional matrices are divided into two, that is the periosteal matrix and the capsular matrix. I hope it's clear until now. So what are microskeletal, macro, periosteal, capsular matrix? We are going to study in the upcoming slide. Beginning with the periosteal matrix. If anyone has any doubt, please ask. Otherwise, this will become all hodgepodge. So coming to the periosteal matrix. So what is a periosteal matrix? Periosteal matrix is the immediate local environment surrounding that soft tissue. Sir, this is the most accepted theory? No, Komal. This is not the most accepted theory. We are going to come to that, which is the most accepted theory, if we get time today, otherwise in the next class. Okay, moving to ahead, but this is the most important or landmark theory you can say, जिसके premise पे काफ़ी orthodontics के concept आगे आज तक we use their application of these concepts in myofunctional appliances and everything. Okay, so just alter the soft tissue and hard tissue. That's what I said, form follows function. You just need to alter the soft tissue and automatically the bone growth will occur. If you remember, just to increase your curiosity, how is it applied? If you know the concept of working of Frankel appliance, what does it do? Frankel appliance have vestibular shields. This was a question in your, I think, last November INA exam last year. Concept, mode of action of Frankel appliance, or based on which theory? What does Frankel appliance do? It has certain vestibular shields. What does these vestibular shields do? It stretches the soft tissue or the buccal mucosa. So soft tissue stretch hua और अपने साथ what will do? It will stretch or allow the hard tissue to also grow according to it. So that is the application of functional matrix theory in orthodontics. Okay, so coming back to it, so what is periosteal and what is capsular matrix? So immediate local environment surrounding the well-defined space. So what is the immediate local environment? So it consists of the muscles, the blood vessels, the nerves, and in the oral cavity, the teeth. Okay, so how does it work? So as you have seen, lack of muscle contraction leads to bone atrophy. If one side of the jaw does not work, what will happen? The bone also starts to get atrophied. Okay, how does it now? Supposedly, you would have seen a long-standing absence of tooth. We extract a tooth from that socket. Supposedly, once 2/6 is a second, first and fourth quadrant posteriors are missing. What happens? Slowly and slowly, the bone, the ridges tend to get resolved. Why does it occur? Because of lack of function. Simple. You have removed the periosteal matrix from there, so the hard tissue also starts to die down. Simple application of functional matrix theory. That's why in today's scenario as well. Okay, moving ahead. So what is the role of muscle function? It allows the developmental changes in the skeletal tissue to which they are attached. So how is it achieved? It is achieved by the muscle and bone interface. So it regulates the growth of the microskeletal unit. So teeth are attached to the alveolar bone of the mandible. If teeth are present, the alveolar bone will also continue to grow. Teeth are absent, the bone will get atrophied and there will be flattened ridge. A long-standing completely edentulous patient, CD patients, everyone would have, you would have done in your graduation, third final internship. Long-standing edentulous patient, flattened ridges are there. Very difficult to place a CD and get retention. Okay. Next, how it acts by altering the size and shape or both of the bones. Okay, so the growth which occurs due to the action of this periosteal matrix is known as transformation growth. Okay, transformation growth. Just remember this term, very important for your MCQ. So next, what is capsular matrix? इन सबको अगर कंबाइन कर दे, द मसल टिश्यू एंड ऑल दैट, they all enclose or occupy a broader anatomic complex. Okay, so different capsule, and when all these capsules are combined, they can give rise to the functional cranial component. So coming back to the capsule, so each capsule, it is thought or assumed by this theory, is an envelope which contain a series of functional cranial components, their skeletal unit and the related functional matrices sandwiched between the two covering layer. So with respect to the craniofacial region, if you want to do study, so there are broadly two capsules which are present, the orofacial capsule and the neurocranial capsule. Orofacial capsule में क्या आ जाएगा? Maxilla, mandible, the surrounding blood vessels, the teeth, the muscles and all that. Neurocranial capsule में क्या आ जाएगा? The brain, okay, the skull vault and all that. So there are two broadly capsules for which we should be concerned as a dental student preparing for their postgraduate exam. So first is the neurocranial capsule, which consists of the brain, the meninges and the cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, so this consists of the skin and the dura mater and the skin and mucosa, which forms the limiting layer around. Okay, so to understand it, how does it regulates growth? So cases of hydrocephaly. What is hydrocephaly? It is a case of increase in the intracranial pressure through the, as we all know from your neuroanatomy, there is continuous formation of CSF, which is formed and drained out as well through the spinal column. Supposedly there is blockage of that column, the CSF is not able to flow out. So what will do? It will increase the intracranial pressure. Okay, so what will do? Pressure increase hua, vascular flow will be obliterated and leading to the absence of the periosteal deposition of bone at the sutural areas. अब suture close नहीं होंगे तो fontanelles will increase, and what is a hydrocephalus head looks like? A broad large head. Okay, that's why the growth of the soft tissue, that's how it regulates. Vice versa, ulta process इसमें examples से explain किया है, try to explain. Okay, next example is the orofacial capsular matrix, that is surrounding the orofacial capsular region. So what are the layers? The limiting layer, of course, here will be the skin on the external aspect and the oral mucous membrane on the internal aspect. Okay, so the capsular matrix bring about the growth of the macroskeletal unit by altering its shape and size, and the growth which occurs here is a translational growth. Here the growth was transformative or transformational growth. Here it is translational growth. Okay, so coming to the skeletal units. So there are two skeletal divided into two categories, the macro and the micro. In mandible, you can subdivide them into various parts like the coronoid process, the body of the mandible, the condylar process. In maxilla, it is very difficult to name them into separate parts, but maxilla also consists of various small macroskeletal units as well. So for simplicity's sake, I have taken up the example of only mandible here. Okay, for you to explain, for me to explain it to you. Okay, so how is the microskeletal unit influenced by the periosteal matrix? So what is periosteal matrix? I just told you that is the immediate surrounding in local environment, that is muscles, bones, blood vessels. So as we know, the role of muscle in the growth of that microskeletal part, like temporalis, which attaches on the coronoid process. If the attachment is severed or cut, the coronoid process of the mandible won't grow. Masseter and medial pterygoid attached on the gonial angle. Atrophy of these muscles, the gonial angle will also get atrophied. Teeth present on the angular bone, I explained it just now. Long term extraction, the bone gets atrophied. Mentalis muscle attaches on the chin. Lack of mentalis, hyperactivity, the chin becomes prominent. Lack or no activity, the chin recedes. Okay, so that's why the change in size and shape of the microskeletal unit occurs independent of changes in the spatial position. That's why it is known as transformative growth or intraosseous growth. That is, it does not move from one area. Mandible ka hi position है choroid condyle, it does not get displaced because of the role of the periosteal matrix. It just gets transformed at that particular place because of the influence of the surrounding muscle. Whereas when we'll do the role of macroskeletal unit, so the enlargement of the capsule tends to displace it or translates it from one position to another, like the growth of the neurocranial capsule. What it will do, it will push the orofacial capsule, the maxilla and the mandible in the downward direction. The growth of the orofacial capsule, what it will do, it will push the whole macroskeletal unit, that is translates it from one position to another. Okay, that's why it is known as translational growth, because there is a spatial change in its position. Okay, now you understood the transformation growth and translational growth. very important for an exam. ये आपके INI में जो assertion reasoning type question होते हैं उसमें ऐसे statements they make. Okay, MCQ में आ जाए तो बहुत ही अच्छी बात है, very easy to answer. जब ये assertion reasoning में आता है तो these statements में फिर समझ नहीं आता है क्या language लिख दी है. Both are explanatory, both are not explanatory of each other, both are incorrect. Okay, for assertion reasoning only, that's why I'm taking so much time and discussing the theory behind them. I can also just mention that periosteal matrix influences microskeletal, capsular matrix influences macroskeletal. Done. Functional matrix theory is done. 3 MCQ है. ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन ट्रांसलेशन इसमें होता है, ट्रांसलेशन होता है कैप्सूल में, ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन द पेरियोस्टेल में. डन, खत्म. 4-5 MCQ हो गए. टिक टिक वाले तो आप कर दोगे सॉल्व. प्रॉब्लम वहाँ आती है जहाँ अंडरस्टैंडिंग या एप्लीकेशन वाले क्वेश्चन आपके आते हैं. ओके, दैट्स वाई आई हैव टू टेक अप सो मच टाइम ऑन दिस फंक्शनल मैट्रिक्स थ्योरी. Okay, so as I was coming back to my topic, so overall skeletal growth occurs through the role of macro plus micro units due to the stimulation of the periosteal and capsular matrix known as interosseous growth by mouse. Inter means between, intra means within. So within the growth या bone के अंदर growth, coronoid की खुद की growth is through periosteal matrix, coronoid, condylar process सबकी. But expansile of within the bone growth is through the role of all of these. So दैट्स द समरी व्हिच आई वांट टू राइट. अगर एमसीक्यू सॉल्व करने ये स्लाइड काफ़ी, और अगर समझना है तो इससे पहले के जो पॉइंट्स बताए दिस शुड बी क्लियर. अगर दोज आर क्लियर, दीज आर वेरी जस्ट पढ़ने की बात है एंड ऑल यू थिंक. इफ एनीवन हैज नी डाउट प्लीज डू टेल, otherwise I'll move ahead. I don't think we'll be able to do servo system and growth relativity hypothesis okay today, because the servo system in turn takes a lot of time to explain. Next comes Van Limburg's compromise hypothesis. So compromise means a middle ground or compromise was accepted. So it's a multifactorial theory. Okay, so very easy to, three major viewpoints were considered. That is a summary of the Sitchers, that is Suture's theory, Scott, cartilaginous theory, and Melvin-Moss. All three was combined, and the role of genetic factors. It was said that intrinsic genetic factors control the chondrocranial growth, that is the base of the skull, and the surrounding desmocranial, that is the cranial vault, and the mid face is through local genetic and local environmental factors. Based on this, a modern composite theory was given. Okay, so as you were asking Komal, which is the most accepted, so this is the most accepted theory, the modern composite theory. It is a composition of all these theories. So specific region, specific growth regulation was allotted in the craniofacial. So craniofacial region has basically three parts: the skull vault, the base of the skull, and the midface region. Okay, as I was telling, it separates the facial skeletal into three parts: the desmocranium, the skull vault; midface, that is the cranial base, that is the chondrocranial; and the smanchnocranial, that is the midface plus the mandible. So what does it say? Mid cranial base through internal genes, desmocranium genes plus environment, and splanchnocranium mostly environment. This was the broadly, you can say, combination of all these three theories, major theories which we have studied. And from there, these slides become important for your MCQ. So there are certain intrinsic factors. Intrinsic means inside the cell which are present, which regulate the genetic control of the skeletal system. Epigenetic matlab, epi matlab bahar, outside the cell, which are expressed outside the cell. Okay, so a cell, coming to the basic human biology of the cell. This is the cell. It has a nucleus. Nucleus के अंदर होते हैं genes. Genes, how do they regulate? So they will express, if you remember transformation, translation, coding and codons and all that, AUG, GU, they will express based on their genetic regulation. They will make certain proteins. Proteins will express themselves and result in the outside external factor. So similar thing which is occurring. Local epigenetic factors, these are genetically determined influences which are expressed outside the cell. So these proteins which are expressed by the cell nucleus, they act outside the cell and bring about their influences. So there are certain local epigenetic and there are general epigenetic factors. Okay, so what are the local? Local means which is in immediate surrounding, which act indirectly by intermediary action on the associated structures. Example, the brain and the eyes. And general epigenetic factors, these are the hormones which act on a distant structure. Okay, like T3, thyroid stimulating hormone, thyroid releasing hormone, expressed from brain, act in the thyroid region. ये तो फिर भी बहुत पास हो गया. Like sex hormones, growth hormones, expressed from brain, act on the whole lower limb trunk region. Okay, so they act at a distance region, whereas local factors, they act on the immediate surrounding structure. Okay, Similarly, we have local environmental and general environmental factors. Local environmental first means not related to genes. Local and general. Local means immediate from the local external environment, example which influences the immediate local environment, like habits, thumb sucking, tongue thrusting. And general environmental factors like the nutrition which we take, the amount of oxygen which we get. These are the general environmental factors. Okay, this is very important, this slide. For an MCQ point of view. If anyone has any doubt until now, please tell. Otherwise, we'll end the session and we'll take up the remaining theories. There are a lot to be discussed in functional matrix only. Okay, functional matrix hypothesis revisited. Why was the reason to revisit it? What were the drawbacks of this theory? Functional matrix hypothesis, how they were overcome. Okay, but in the limited amount of time, I was only able to cover this much only. Cybernetic theory or servo system theory, very important. Growth relativity hypothesis, another very important theory because its applications on the mechanisms is very important, how it helps the myofunctional appliances to act, how the mandible grows in that. Okay, anyhow, until now, if anyone has any doubt, because I don't want to rush up those theories, so I'll stop here now and take them up in the next session, whenever, next Thursday I suppose. Okay, and complete the theories of growth. If anyone has any doubt, again I'm asking, please try to mention, otherwise I'll end the session. Sir, when you will be taking lecture on aligners? Okay, I'll try to take it. Okay, generally these things are covered in our classes. Okay, on YouTube sessions we cannot cover everything or whole of the ortho. Some people ask for growth, some people ask for biomechanics, okay, so I try to take as much as possible, but soon, because last time someone asked me to take up on biomechanics. Okay, biomechanics I think already is mentioned, present on YouTube. Aligners I'll try to take as soon as possible, that's all I can say. In the meanwhile, if you come across any question or any doubt, you can write in the comment section. I'm repeatedly said my doubts related to orthodontics on any topic, not necessarily pertaining to the topic which is discussed in that particular session. Sir, MCQ कहाँ से पढ़ने हैं? नीट में questions weightage कितना है? I think you would have gone through. I have already told you before as well. There are 14 questions in NEET, but I don't think you should go with that 14 का जो वो landmark होता है, because it varies. You cannot question them. अब एक supposedly एक syndrome से एक question आ गया जो है treatment Pierre-Robin syndrome. Supposedly Pierre-Robin syndrome is part of orthodontics as well. It's part of oral pathology as well, part of general pathology. So how will you mark it? You cannot say ना कि ये 14 क्वेश्चन ऑर्थो के हो गए, आपने 15वां कैसे पूछ लिया. They'll say this is of other topic. All are interlinked to each other. Next question, skeletal maturity पढ़िए. Skeletal maturity indicators I have taken. I think it will be present on this YouTube. AIIMS के लिए important topic relative to AIIMS I'll take up, I think, closer to November. We generally have a predictor series at that time, so I'll take up the important topic. Until then, everything is important. Okay, so I think I've answered most of the questions, so I'll end the session. Again, I'm saying if anyone has any doubt, please do not hesitate to ask related to orthodontics. I'll be very happy to answer. And do not wait कि वो टॉपिक होगा तभी पढ़ेंगे. एसआरसी पेपर कहाँ से मिलेंगे? My gentle suggestion to you is do not run after SRC papers. Okay, because SRC पेपर के जो क्वेश्चंस होते हैं वो आप लोग को समझ में नहीं आएंगे and you just end up mugging them. तो करना क्या है? पहले करना ये है कि पहले प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चन जो AIIMS के आए हैं वो कंप्लीट करें. ओके, हमारे ऐप पे तो दे आर प्रेजेंट. वैसे अगर इफ यू आर आस्किंग फॉर द सोर्स वेयर यू वांट, द ऐप में है ये डैम्स की ऐप पे क्वेश्चन. दैट्स व्हाट आई वाज सेइंग. कितने आने के चांसेस है? फर्स्ट कंप्लीट योर बेसिक कोर्स एंड बेसिक एमसीक्यूज, द PYQs. ओके, जो आए हैं लास्ट 10 साल के, एटलीस्ट 2025 से लेकर 2015 तक के डेंटल साइड के. इफ़ यू आर मतलब इतने थॉरली यू हैव डन एंड कॉन्सेप्ट्स यू आर क्लियर, देन ओनली मूव टुवर्ड्स एसआरसी पेपर. उससे पहले मूव करने का कोई फ़ायदा नहीं. यू विल बी वेस्टिंग योर टाइम एंड एनर्जी. ओके, क्योंकि जो एग्जामिनर है वो पेपर बनाता है, वो एसआरसी को कॉपी पेस्ट नहीं करता है. इन AIIMS एक ही सिंगल एग्जामिनर को दोनों का पेपर बनाने मिल जाता है. तो समटाइम्स या बाई चांस इट हैपन्स कि वो सेम क्वेश्चन दोनों में डाल देता है, थिंकिंग अपॉन द कैलिबर लेवल ऑफ द स्टूडेंट. ऐसा नहीं कि कोई हाई फाई बिल्कुल हाई टेक स्टडी बेस्ड क्वेश्चन जो एसआर का है वो पीजी के पेपर में आ जाएगा. रिपीट कम ही होते हैं. हाँ, कम ही होते हैं, बट अगर कम भी में से भी एक दो रिपीट हो गए एंड यू वर नॉट एबल टू आंसर इट, व्हाट्स द पॉइंट? एंड अगेन मैं शायद पहले भी बता चुका हूँ, व्हेन यू डू PYQ और व्हेन यू सॉल्व एनी क्वेश्चन MCQ क्वेश्चन, डू नॉट डू इट विद द इंटेंशन कि वो क्वेश्चन आ जाएगा. हमें क्वेश्चन सॉल्व इसलिए करने होते हैं टू क्लियर आवर कॉन्सेप्ट कि जो हमने पढ़ा है. मैंने इतनी 1 घंटे आपको ग्रोथ थ्योरीज पढ़ाई, उसके MCQ ही अगर आप सॉल्व नहीं कर पाए तो 1 घंटा तो वेस्ट है आपके लिए ना. ओके, माई सजेशन या माई रिक्वेस्ट टू यू इज नेवर एवर सॉल्व MCQ, be it PYQ, be it a new MCQ, be it a test को सीरीज क्वेश्चन ऑफ एनी इंस्टीट्यूट, विद द इंटेंशन दैट ये क्वेश्चन एग्जाम में आएगा. तो सॉल्व इस इंटेंशन से करना है कि उस क्वेश्चन को हम में जो 4 ऑप्शन है उसमें से एक ऑप्शन सही है, तो जो बाकी 3 गलत है, ठीक है, उन 3 गलत से 3 अलग क्वेश्चन बन सकते हैं. तो यू शुड डायरेक्ट थ्योरेटिकल बेस्ड क्वेश्चन है. सपोजली उन्होंने साइंटिस्ट का नाम पूछा तो बाकी 3 जो ऑप्शन है उन 3 में से उन्होंने तीनों ने कुछ ना कुछ दिया होगा. ऐसी आर्बिट्री किसी का नाम नहीं ऑप्शन में डाल देंगे वो लोग. तो यू शुड बी एबल टू टेल कि बाकी 3 ऑप्शंस ने क्या क्या किया है, देन ओनली से कि आपको वो क्वेश्चन आता है. अगर आप उस इंटेंशन से करोगे कि आ सकता है तो मैं इसको रट लूँ, इट्स नॉट ह्यूमनली पॉसिबल. फ्रॉम टुडे इटसेल्फ टिल आई थिंक नवंबर AIIMS यू ऑन एन एवरेज अगर कम से कम भी पढ़ोगे 5-6 हज़ार MCQ तो आप देख ही लोगे. इट्स नॉट पॉसिबल फॉर एनीवन इन दिस वर्ल्ड टू रिमेंबर 5000 MCQs. का रूल बताएंगे MCQ सॉल्विंग ट्रिक. नेक्स्ट टाइम से विल बी टेकिंग अप MCQs ओनली. आई विल टेल यू. ओके, आई विल टेल यू एट दैट टाइम. गेस करने का ट्रिक तो नहीं है. हाँ, MCQ सॉल्विंग करने का ट्रिक व्हाट आई यूज्ड टू डू आई विल टेल यू नेक्स्ट क्लास से. much better able to explain on a MCQ rather than arbitrary. Okay, so till then keep on solving questions, okay, and not with the intention of mugging them up कि वो आ सकता है. अगर वो कॉन्सेप्ट आपको क्लियर है वेरी वेल, नहीं क्लियर है उसको थ्योरी पढ़ो एंड देन सॉल्व. एंड डू नॉट स्ट्रेट अवे जंप टू SRC पेपर. पहले अपने पेपर सॉल्व करो, ओके, एंड देन अगर टाइम बचे एंड यू आर डन विद इट देन ओनली ओपन देम, अदरवाइज देयर इज नो पॉइंट. आपको अपने ही क्लियर नहीं है SR का क्या करेंगे. ओके, सो ओके, थैंक यू फॉर योर टाइम. आई विल एंड दिस सेशन.